My parents spent 2 hours praising my sister's mansion while calling me a failure, then asked if I needed charity housing. What they didn't know was that I owned the 3 houses surrounding hers. I'm Bella Mitchell, 32, and this is the story of the most shocking family dinner of my life. For 5 years, my parents and 25 relatives believed I was the family disappointment, a struggling freelancer who couldn't afford stability while my sister Sarah climbed the corporate ladder. They offered me pity, unsolicited advice, and finally, a humiliating intervention. But sometimes, the quietest person at the table holds the most powerful cards. And that night, I decided it was time to play them. Before we dive into what happened, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy stories about family drama and sweet vindication. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is there. It started 3 days before the dinner, when my mother called with her usual condescending reminder. For 5 years, I'd been working as a freelance graphic designer. 5 years of building my client base, perfecting my craft, and yes, making good money. But to my parents, Robert and Linda Mitchell, freelancing wasn't a real job. It was something you did between real jobs, a placeholder until you figured things out. Every family gathering followed the same script. Mom would pat my hand sympathetically and tell whoever was listening, "Oh, Bella's still finding her way," unlike Sarah with her director position at Morrison Marketing. The pause before finding her way always lasted just long enough for everyone to fill in their own assumptions. Struggling, failing, lost. Dad was worse in his own way. He'd been an accountant for 30 years before retiring, and to him, success meant one thing: a steady paycheck from a corporation with a benefits package. "When are you going to get serious about your career?" he'd ask, usually after 3 glasses of wine. "Your sister had already bought her first property by your age." Sarah, my older sister, 35, marketing director, and apparently the golden standard by which all Mitchell children should be measured. She never corrected them, never mentioned that her director title came with a team of exactly 2 people, never mentioned that half her salary went to maintaining an image she couldn't actually afford. But I kept quiet. I'd learned that defending myself only led to longer lectures about accepting constructive criticism and being realistic about your limitations. So I smiled, nodded, and mentally reviewed my bank statements. The ones showing steady 5-figure monthly deposits from clients who valued my work, even if my family didn't. Tonight would be different, though. I just didn't know how different yet. The call came 3 days before the annual Mitchell family dinner. Mom's voice carried that particular tone she used when she thought she was being subtle but wasn't. "Bella, dear, don't forget Saturday. And please bring something nice this time. Maybe that potato salad from the deli? And—" she paused. "Dress professionally for once. Marcus Thompson will be there, the property manager from Rosewood Heights. Sarah's invited him. Such connections could help you." I almost laughed. If only she knew that Marcus and I exchanged emails weekly about maintenance schedules and tenant complaints. But I just said, "Sure, Mom, professional it is." Saturday arrived gray and drizzling, matching the mood I expected for the evening. I dressed carefully, a simple black dress that cost more than Sarah's entire designer outfit. Not that anyone would know the difference. In my bag, I carried a folder I'd been debating about for weeks. Just some papers, nothing dramatic. My phone buzzed as I was leaving. A notification from my bank. "Rental payment received, Unit 44, $4,500. Then another. "Rental payment received, Unit 42, $4,500. Right on time, as always. My tenants in Rosewood Heights were wonderfully consistent. I looked at the notifications and smiled. Sarah's new mansion was in Rosewood Heights, too. Unit 43, if I remembered correctly, the one between Units 42 and 44. The cheapest property on that particular street, though she probably didn't know that when she bought it. The folder in my bag felt heavier. 3 years of keeping this secret, 3 years of letting my family think I was barely scraping by. But there's something about being publicly pitied at your own family dinner that makes you reconsider your choices. I started my car and headed to my parents' house, wondering if tonight I'd finally have enough. Sarah's white Mercedes was already in the driveway when I arrived, parked at that perfect angle that screamed, "Look at my success." Through the window, I could see the house buzzing with relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins, and their kids. 25 people who'd gathered to celebrate Sarah's latest achievement while wondering what went wrong with Bella. I barely made it through the door before it started. "Sarah just showed us the virtual tour of her new place," Aunt Janet gushed, pulling me into a hug that felt more like an inspection. 4 bedrooms, can you imagine? Mom appeared, linking her arm through Sarah's. "Come, let me show you the photos to the Robinsons. They haven't seen them yet." She glanced at me. "Bella, why don't you help in the kitchen? The caterer needs someone to arrange the appetizers." Of course. Sarah gets the victory lap. I get kitchen duty. I was arranging shrimp on a platter when I heard Dad's booming voice from the living room. "Built-in smart home system. My daughter doesn't do anything halfway." His daughter. Singular. As if he only had one. "Bella?" A familiar voice made me turn. Marcus Thompson stood in the kitchen doorway, looking slightly uncomfortable in the family chaos. Tall, mid-40s, with the kind of quiet authority that came from managing millions in real estate. He nodded at me, a small, professional acknowledgement that nobody else caught. "Marcus," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "Mom mentioned you were coming." "Sarah insisted," he said, then paused. "Interesting neighborhood, Rosewood Heights?" "Very," I agreed, turning back to the shrimp. He said nothing more, but I felt him watching me for a moment before returning to the living room. In my bag, the folder seemed to pulse with possibility. Dinner was announced, and we all filed into the dining room. The seating arrangement told me everything. Sarah at Dad's right hand, the position of honor, me squeezed between Cousin Tommy's kids, who were already flicking peas at each other. Aunt Janet, 3 wines in, leaned across the table. "Bella, sweetie, still single? You're 32 now. Time's ticking, you know, though I suppose it's hard to date when you're not financially stable." "She's focusing on her career," Mom interjected, though her tone suggested she was apologizing for me rather than defending me. Uncle Tom jumped in. "Freelance work can't be stable. How do you even pay rent? I keep telling my kids, get a real job first, then chase dreams." I took a slow sip of water, thinking about the 3 years I'd spent quietly building my real estate portfolio. 3 years of living frugally while everyone assumed I was broke. 3 years of reinvesting every profit while my family whispered about my poor life choices behind my back. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Sarah maxed out credit cards to maintain appearances, I'd been buying properties in cash, negotiating deals before dawn, building something real. But silence had been my strategy. My mentor's words echoed. Success doesn't need an announcement. Except silence had a cost. Last month, I'd lost a major client because they'd heard, through the grapevine, that I was financially unstable and might not be able to complete their project. The grapevine, I later learned, started with my own mother expressing concern about me at her book club. I looked around the table at these people who claimed to love me while actively undermining my reputation. My grip tightened on my fork. Maybe success didn't need an announcement, but respect apparently required proof. "I just worry about her future," Mom was saying to Mrs. Robinson, loud enough for the entire table to hear. "Sarah's set for life, but Bella, well, we all make our choices." The conversation I'd had with my mentor David last week came flooding back. "You're protecting your peace by staying quiet," he'd said. "But you're also enabling their disrespect. There's a difference between humility and being a doormat." He was right. My silence hadn't protected me. It had emboldened them. The freelance work they mocked? I was pulling in 6 figures annually from 3 major tech companies. The instability they worried about? I had 18 months of expenses and savings, plus rental income that could cover my lifestyle twice over. But they didn't know any of that because I'd never told them. I'd convinced myself that proving my worth to people who should love me unconditionally was beneath me. Yet here I was, listening to them plan my rescue from a failure that existed only in their minds. Sarah stood up, wine glass in hand. Before we eat, I just want to thank everyone for being here. And special thanks to Mom and Dad for always believing in me. Success is so much sweeter when you have family who supports your dreams. The table erupted in applause. Dad wiped away what might have been a tear. Mom beamed like Sarah had just cured cancer. To Sarah, Uncle Tom raised his glass. Proof that hard work and ambition pay off. Everyone raised their glasses. Everyone except me. I was staring at Marcus Thompson, who was quietly typing something on his phone. He glanced up, caught my eye, and gave the slightest nod. Tonight, something had to change. The only question was how much truth this family dinner could handle. Sarah wasn't done. Of course she wasn't. I have to give you all the grand tour, virtually at least. She pulled out her phone, connecting it to Dad's TV. This is the foyer, marble floors, imported from Italy. The relatives oohed and awed as she swiped through photo after photo. The living room with its vaulted ceilings, the kitchen with professional-grade appliances, the master bedroom with its walk-in closet bigger than my supposed studio apartment. 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, she continued, glowing with pride. The pool needs some work, but by summer it'll be perfect for parties. And the best part? She paused for dramatic effect. It's in Rosewood Heights, the most exclusive neighborhood in the city. More applause, more congratulations. Cousin Lisa actually whistled. How much did that set you back? Uncle Tom asked, though his tone suggested he was impressed regardless of the answer. Well, Sarah laughed, that fake modest laugh she'd perfected. Let's just say it was a smart investment. Property values there only go up. I noticed Marcus Thompson had stopped typing. He was watching Sarah with an expression I recognized, the polite mask professionals wore when clients said something incorrect, but correcting them would be awkward. He knew what I knew. Sarah had bought the least valuable property on that street, the one with foundation issues that would cost a fortune to fix. Bella, Sarah turned to me with what she probably thought was kindness. You really should come visit. The guest room is huge, much nicer than wherever you're staying now. The table went quiet, waiting for my response. 25 pairs of eyes, all carrying the same mixture of pity and superiority. I set down my water glass carefully. That's generous, Sarah, really. Mom seized the moment like a shark smelling blood. Sarah bought this all by herself at 35, no help from anyone. That's what focus and ambition look like. Some people have drive, Dad added, his eyes finding mine across the table. Others, well, they're content with less. The subtext wasn't even subtle anymore. I was the others, the one content with less, the failure. Aunt Janet stage whispered to her daughter, "This is why we keep telling you to get a corporate job. Stability matters." Bella does her little designs, Mom said, as if I was a child with crayons rather than a professional with Fortune 500 clients. But it's not the same as real career growth, is it? Maybe you could learn from your sister's ambition, Dad suggested, his tone helpful in that way that made me want to scream. The whispers started then, that low hum of relatives discussing my life as if I wasn't sitting right there. 32 and still renting. No retirement plan. Poor Linda. Must be so worried. Sarah sat back, basking in the comparison. She'd always needed to win, even when there was no competition, especially when the opponent wasn't even playing. Marcus Thompson cleared his throat. Rosewood Heights is indeed an exclusive area. Very interesting property dynamics there. Sarah beamed at the validation. Marcus would know. He manages half the properties there. More than half, actually, Marcus corrected quietly, including some very valuable ones. Something in his tone made me look up. He was staring directly at me, a question in his eyes. I gave the tiniest shake of my head. Not yet. But the night was far from over, and the humiliation was just getting started. Sarah, emboldened by the attention, decided to twist the knife deeper. You know, Bella, I've been thinking. My guest room is just sitting empty. You could stay there for a while, get back on your feet. That's so generous, Mom clasped her hands together. Bella, isn't your sister thoughtful? This could be exactly what you need, some stability while you figure things out. We could work out a family rate, Sarah continued, her voice dripping with false charity. Maybe you could do some design work for me in exchange for rent? I need someone to organize my home office. The table murmured approval. What a wonderful sister. So caring. So successful, and still thinking of family. It would be good for you, Dad added firmly. Living in a proper house, seeing how successful people organize their lives, might inspire you. Uncle Tom nodded sagely. Nothing wrong with accepting help, Bella. We all need a hand sometimes. Especially at your age, Aunt Janet added. Starting over gets harder every year. They were discussing my life like I was a charity case, a problem to be solved. Sarah's offer wasn't generosity, it was a power play, a way to cement her position as the successful sister swooping in to save the failure. I noticed Marcus Thompson pull out a leather notebook, jotting something down. His movements were deliberate, like he was documenting something important. Don't worry, sis, Sarah said, reaching across the table to pat my hand. My guest room is huge. You'll have plenty of space for your work. The pause before work said everything. Even her charity came with contempt. The folder in my bag felt like it was burning. 3 years of silence. 3 years of this. Maybe it was time they learned what my little designs had actually built. If you've ever been underestimated by your own family, you'll understand what happened next. Before we continue, what's the most frustrating assumption your relatives have made about you? Share in the comments below. And if this story resonates with you, please hit that like button. It really helps other people who need to hear this message find the video. Now, back to that dinner table. Dad stood up, tapping his wineglass for attention. The room fell silent. This was it, the moment he'd make some grand pronouncement, probably about success and family values, with Sarah as the shining example. Family, he began, his voice taking on that formal tone he used for important announcements. We're here to celebrate success, but also to support each other through challenges. His eyes found mine. Here it comes. We've been discussing this, your mother and we want to help Bella get back on her feet. He said it like he was announcing a charitable donation. Sarah's generous offer of accommodation is just the start. We think it's time for an intervention of sorts. An intervention? For being a freelancer, for paying my bills on time and living within my means, or so they thought. It's time Bella accepted help from successful people, he continued. There's no shame in admitting when you've chosen the wrong path. Mom nodded enthusiastically. We've even talked to Robert's friend at Henderson Accounting. They might have an entry-level position available. Entry-level. After 5 years of running my own business, the disrespect was breathtaking. Sarah stood up beside Dad, the picture of filial success. We're family. We don't leave anyone behind, even when they're... She paused delicately, struggling. The entire table was nodding, smiling, approving of this beautiful moment of family charity. Poor Bella, finally getting the help she needed. Lucky Bella, having such caring relatives. I looked directly at Dad, then at Mom, then at Sarah. 3 people who should have known me best and somehow knew me least. That's when I decided 5 years of silence was enough. I stood up slowly, my movement drawing every eye in the room. I reached for my bag, pulling out the folder I'd been carrying. The room watched with curiosity mixed with concern. Was poor Bella about to have a breakdown? Before I respond to your generous offer, I said, my voice calm and clear, let me ask Sarah something. Sarah's smile faltered slightly. Of course. Your neighbors in units 42 and 44, I said, pulling out a single sheet of paper. Do they still complain about the noise from the construction next door? The color drained from Sarah's face. How did you know my neighbor's unit numbers? Lucky guess? I offered, though we both knew it wasn't. Marcus Thompson shifted in his seat, leaning forward with interest. Have you been stalking my neighborhood? Sarah's voice pitched higher. That's creepy, Bella. Not stalking, I said, setting the paper on the table. Managing. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Managing. Present tense. Ongoing. Dad frowned. Managing what? What are you talking about? I looked at Sarah, whose eyes were darting between me and the paper I'd placed face down on the table. She knew something was coming, but couldn't quite piece together what. The construction noise, I continued conversationally, started 3 weeks ago. New bathroom installations in both units. The contractor said it would take another week. I apologize if it's been disruptive. You apologize? Mom sounded completely lost. Uncle Tom laughed nervously. What, you're pretending to own property now? Bella, this is sad. But Marcus Thompson wasn't laughing. He was pulling out his phone, fingers moving quickly across the screen. I'm not pretending anything, I said. I'm stating facts. Marcus, you manage Rosewood Heights properties. Perhaps you could clarify? The room turned to look at him, the unexpected authority in this bizarre moment. Marcus stood slowly, commanding the room's attention with his professional presence. I can indeed clarify. Sarah laughed, but it sounded forced. This is ridiculous, Marcus, tell them. Bella doesn't own property in Rosewood Heights. She can barely afford— Actually, Marcus interrupted, his voice carrying the weight of authority, Ms. Mitchell does own property in Rosewood Heights. The laughter died. The room went still. That's impossible, Dad said flatly. We would know if Bella owned property. Would you? I asked. When was the last time you asked about my life without assuming failure? Marcus pulled out his iPad, fingers swiping across the screen. I manage several properties for Ms. Mitchell, have been for 3 years now. Several? Mom's voice cracked. Sarah stood up abruptly. This is some kind of joke. A prank. Bella probably asked you to lie for her. Marcus's expression hardened. I don't lie about property records, Ms. Mitchell. My reputation is built on integrity. He turned the iPad to face the table. These are public records. Anyone can verify them. But she's— Aunt Janet sputtered. She's broke. She does freelance work. Successful freelance work, apparently, Marcus said dryly. Successful enough to invest in real estate. I watched my family's worldview crumble in real time. The poor, struggling daughter, the charity case, the one who needed saving. None of it was real. I believe, Marcus continued, pulling up another screen, we should discuss exactly what properties Ms. Bella Mitchell owns in Rosewood Heights. Sarah sank back into her chair. She already knew. The unit numbers had told her everything. The silence was deafening. 25 people who'd spent the evening pitying me were about to learn exactly how wrong they'd been. Stop! Mom's voice cut through the tension. Just stop this. This performance, Bella. It's embarrassing. Embarrassing? I asked quietly. Yes, this jealousy, this need to compete with your sister. It's why you're unsuccessful, this attitude, this delusion. Dad stood up, his face red. Accept reality, Bella. Not everyone can be Sarah. Some people achieve things, others don't. That's life. The relatives were shaking their heads, whispering, Poor thing, she's desperate. Making up stories. So sad. Aunt Janet tutted loudly. Honey, lying won't make you successful. It just makes you look pathetic. Sarah found her voice again, emboldened by the family support. Bella, we're trying to help you. This fantasy you're creating, it's concerning. Maybe you need professional help. Professional help. Mom latched onto the idea. Yes, that's what you need. Not these made-up stories about owning property. They were diagnosing me now. The failed daughter had moved from disappointing to delusional in their eyes. Marcus cleared his throat. With respect, Mrs. Mitchell, I'm not part of any performance. I'm stating facts from Rosewood Heights property database. She probably paid you, Uncle Tom suggested. Desperate people do desperate things. The insults kept coming, each one designed to push me back into my box, the one labeled family failure. They needed me to be unsuccessful. It validated their worldview, their choices, their treatment of me. Marcus looked at me, waiting. He had the proof right there on his iPad, but he was letting me decide when to deploy it. I stood up again, my voice cutting through their mockery. You're right about one thing. Not everyone can be Sarah. Sarah smirked. Some of us, I continued, prefer being landlords instead. The word landlords hung in the air like a lit fuse. Sarah's smirk twisted into confusion. Landlord? Of what? A storage unit? Of 3 properties in Rosewood Heights, I said evenly. The 2 houses on either side of yours, Sarah, and the one directly across the street. The room erupted in dismissive laughter. This is pathetic. Dad shook his head. Bella, stop embarrassing yourself. 3 properties? Uncle Tom wheezed between laughs. In Rosewood Heights? That would be worth millions. 2.1 million, to be exact, I said. The laughter grew louder, more mocking. They thought I'd lost my mind. Sarah stood up, her face flushed with second-hand embarrassment. Bella, I live there. I know my neighbors. You're not my landlord. I never said I was your landlord, I replied calmly. I said I own the properties next to and across from yours. Prove it, Sarah challenged. If you own these magical properties, prove it right now. I looked at Marcus. Mr. Thompson, would you mind confirming the ownership records for units 42, 44, and 37 in Rosewood Heights? Marcus nodded, turning his iPad to face the entire table. Certainly. The mocking voices began to quiet as they saw his expression, serious, professional, not a trace of humor. Units 42 and 44, the properties adjacent to Unit 43, that's your house, Ms. Sarah Mitchell, have been owned by Ms. Bella Mitchell for 3 years. The laughter stopped completely. Unit 37, directly across the street, was purchased by Ms. Bella Mitchell 18 months ago. You could hear a pin drop. Each property, Marcus continued, his voice filling the silence, currently rents for $4,500 per month. Nobody was laughing anymore. Sarah's face had gone from red to white. This isn't possible. Those houses, they're worth more than yours, Marcus said simply. Significantly more, actually. Dad grabbed the iPad, staring at the screen like it might change if he looked hard enough. These are forged. They have to be. Public records aren't forged, Mr. Mitchell, Marcus replied patiently. You can verify this yourself on the county assessor's website. Mom was shaking her head repeatedly, as if denial could change reality. But she's a freelancer. She drives a Honda. She lives below her means, I suggested. Invests instead of spending. Builds wealth instead of displaying it. Sarah pulled out her phone, frantically typing. I knew what she was doing, checking the property records herself. Her face went even paler. The dates, she whispered. You bought these before I even found my house. 3 years ago, I confirmed. When the market dipped, paid cash for the first 2 with my freelance savings. The rental income funded the third. Cash? Dad's voice cracked. Uncle Tom had pulled out his phone too. Holy! These properties are listed here. Owner, B. Mitchell. He looked up at me. His expression completely changed. The rental estimates. This is $13,500 a month in income. Plus my freelance work, I added quietly. The room was spinning for them. Everything they believed, everything they'd said about me, every assumption and insult, all wrong. Marcus pulled up another screen. Should I also mention the LLC? Rosewood Property Management, Sole proprietor Bella Mitchell? Sarah dropped her phone. It clattered on the table, the screen showing Zillow's property records. The successful sister. The failure. The roles hadn't just reversed. They'd never been accurate to begin with. Marcus turned the iPad to show the full portfolio summary. Ms. Bella Mitchell owns units 42, 44, and 37 in Rosewood Heights. Combined property value, $2.1 million. Monthly rental income, $13,500. All properties are currently leased with tenants on 2-year contracts. The numbers glowed on the screen, undeniable and overwhelming. She's been our most reliable property owner for 3 years, Marcus continued, his tone professional but with an edge of satisfaction. Never a late payment to contractors, prompt responses to tenant concerns, excellent property maintenance. The kind of owner we wish we had more of. Dad's hands were trembling as he held the iPad. But how? Freelance design work pays well when you have Fortune 500 clients, I said. You just never asked who I worked for. You heard freelance and assumed failure. Mom's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. $2 million? In property alone, Marcus clarified. That doesn't include her business assets or savings. Sarah finally found her voice, though it came out strangled. You own the houses next to mine? You're my neighbor's landlord? Technically, my LLC is, I said. But yes. You could have bought my house? Her voice pitched higher with each word. I looked at it, I admitted, but it had foundation issues, bad investment. You overpaid by about $200,000. The truth hung heavy in the air. Sarah's mansion, her pride and joy, the symbol of her success, was the worst house on the street. And everyone at the table now knew it. Aunt Janet's wineglass slipped from her numb fingers, red wine spreading across Mom's white tablecloth like blood. Nobody moved to clean it up. They were all staring at me, the failure who'd just revealed herself as the family's biggest success. Show them the purchase dates, I said to Marcus. He swiped to another screen. Unit 42, purchased March 2021. Unit 44, purchased June 2021. Unit 37, purchased January 2023. All before Sarah bought her place, Uncle Tom said slowly, doing the math. You were already established in that neighborhood when she moved in. Sarah's face crumbled. You knew. When I was bragging about finding that house, you already owned the better ones. You were so happy, I said simply. Why would I rain on your parade? Marcus pulled up another document. These are all public records. The county assessor's office has everything online. Ms. Bella Mitchell's name is on all 3 deeds, free and clear, no mortgages. No mortgages? Dad's voice was barely a whisper. I don't believe in debt, I said. Another thing you never asked about, my financial philosophy. Cousin Lisa was frantically checking her phone. It's all here, public records. Bella owns, oh my God, the 2 Victorian houses? Those are gorgeous. And the modern one across the street? The Victorian houses needed work, I explained. I spent 6 months renovating each one. Did a lot of the design work myself, actually. That little design hobby you all mock? It saved me $50,000 in renovation costs. Your houses are worth $800,000 each, Sarah said, reading from her phone. Mine is valued at $700,000. Actually, Marcus corrected gently, with the foundation issues, current market value for Unit 43 is closer to $650,000. Sarah looked like she'd been slapped. The best part? Marcus added. Ms. Mitchell bought during the market dip. Her properties have appreciated 40% in 3 years. Excellent investment timing. Mom finally spoke, her voice hollow. We told everyone you were struggling. I know, I said quietly. I heard. The room went completely silent. 25 people who'd spent years pitying me were staring at proof I was the wealthiest person at the table. If you're enjoying this story of quiet success, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. I post news stories every week about setting boundaries and finding justice. What would you have done in my position? Let me know below. Now here's what happened next. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours but was probably 30 seconds. 25 people frozen in shock, processing the complete reversal of everything they believed. Mom's face had gone through several expressions: shock, disbelief, embarrassment, and finally, something like anger. Her mouth opened and closed several times before she managed, But, but you never said anything. You never asked, I replied. Every conversation was about Sarah's success and my assumed failure. When would I have mentioned it? During the lectures about getting a real job? Or maybe while you were telling strangers I was finding my way? Dad's face was deep red now, whether from embarrassment or anger I couldn't tell. He set the iPad down carefully, like it might explode. This changes. Nothing, Sarah interrupted, her voice sharp with humiliation. It changes nothing. So Bella has money. Good for her. But her hands were shaking, and everyone could see it. Aunt Janet was still staring at the wine stains spreading across the tablecloth, as if it was easier to focus on that than the revelation. 2.1 million, she kept muttering. 2.1 million. Uncle Tom cleared his throat. Well, this is unexpected. That was an understatement. The unsuccessful daughter they'd all pitied, advised, and patronized was worth more than most of them combined. Marcus stood there, iPad in hand, patient and professional. Ms. Mitchell also has an excellent credit score and a diverse investment portfolio, but I assume that's not necessary to discuss. Not necessary, I agreed. I think they get the point. The kids at the table, the ones who'd been flicking peas earlier, were wide-eyed, looking between me and their parents like they were watching a magic show. One of them, brave little Emma, piped up, "So Aunt Bella is rich?" "Aunt Bella is successful," I corrected gently. "There's a difference." "Why?" Mom's voice cracked. "Why would you hide this from your own family?" I looked at her steadily. "I didn't hide it. You never asked about my successes, only assumed my failures. Every family dinner for 5 years has been about Sarah's achievements and my need for help. When exactly should I have mentioned my property portfolio?" "You made us look like fools," Dad said, his voice low and angry. "No," I replied calmly. "You made assumptions. You decided freelancing meant failure. You decided that because I don't flash wealth, I don't have it. You told everyone I was struggling without ever asking if it was true." Every dinner was about Sarah's promotions, Sarah's bonuses, Sarah's mansion, I continued. The few times I tried to share good news, landing a major client, completing a big project, you'd pat my head and change the subject back to Sarah's real job. Sarah flinched at that, but I wasn't done. I learned silence was better than being dismissed. Why share my success with people who'd already decided I was a failure? "We're your family," Mom protested. "We deserve to know." "Did you? The same family that told my potential clients I was financially unstable? The same family that tried to set me up with an entry-level accounting job tonight?" Marcus cleared his throat. "If I may interject, success doesn't require an audience. Ms. Mitchell's approach to wealth building is actually quite admirable. Quiet accumulation rather than loud consumption." "I didn't need your validation to build wealth," I said, looking at each family member in turn. "And I'm not going to apologize for protecting my peace while I did it." The truth was harder to swallow than the lie had been to believe. I pulled out my phone and typed a quick message. "Since you're all so concerned about my housing situation, let me solve that right now." "What are you doing?" Sarah asked, her voice thin. "Calling my assistant." The phone rang once before Amy picked up. "Amy? Yes. I need you to schedule a viewing for Unit 37. This week would be perfect." I could hear Amy's professional voice through the speaker. "Of course, Ms. Mitchell. For a potential tenant?" "For my parents, actually. They're concerned about family helping family." I looked directly at Dad. "I'll give you the family discount, 20% off market rate. That's $3,600 instead of $4,500. Mom gasped. You want us to be your tenants? You wanted to help me with housing. I'm returning the favor. Unit 37 is beautiful. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, renovated kitchen. Much nicer than your current place, and the homeowners association handles all maintenance. I slid a folder across the table, the one I'd been carrying all night. Standard lease agreement, first month and security deposit. I can have it ready by the first. Dad stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. You're serious? As serious as you were about that entry-level accounting position, I replied evenly. This is what family helping family looks like when you have resources. The offer's genuine. Sarah laughed, but it sounded hysterical. You're trying to make Mom and Dad your tenants? I'm offering them a beautiful home at below market rate, I corrected. That's more than anyone else at this table has offered. The rental agreement sat on the table between us, as real and undeniable as the success they'd refused to see. Think about it, I said. Amy will be in touch. Sarah grabbed her phone, frantically pulling up Zillow again. Her fingers flew across the screen, checking property values, rental rates, market comparisons. With each swipe, her face grew paler. This can't be right, she muttered. The Victorian houses, they're listed as premier properties. They are now, I said, after the renovations. She kept scrolling, her breathing getting shallower. You own the 3 best houses on the street, the 3 most valuable properties. Location matters, I agreed. The Victorians are on the corner lots, bigger yards, better light. The modern house has the best view. My house, Sarah's voice broke. My mansion is the cheapest one? Marcus nodded sympathetically. Unit 43 was a flip. Quick renovation, cosmetic fixes, but the foundation issues were never properly addressed. The previous owner just wanted to sell fast. You knew, Sarah turned on me, tears starting to form. When I was touring houses, when I was so excited, you knew I was buying the worst one. You were so happy, I repeated. You loved it. Why would I ruin that? The realtor said it was a steal, she whispered. It was, Marcus said quietly. For them. Sarah stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I need some air. But she didn't move toward the door. She stood there swaying slightly, processing the fact that her greatest achievement was actually proof of poor judgment. The mansion she'd lorded over me for months was the neighborhood's white elephant. You could have warned me, she said finally. Would you have listened? The unsuccessful sister giving the successful one real estate advice? She had no answer for that. We both knew she would have laughed in my face. I stood up, addressing the entire table. From now on, things change. Bella, Mom started. No, I cut her off. I've listened to your assumptions for 5 years. Now you'll listen to my boundaries. The room was silent except for the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. First, no more assumptions about my life, my finances, or my choices. If you want to know something, ask. Don't assume. Dad opened his mouth, then closed it. Second, no more pity, no more poor Bella stories to your friends, no more unsolicited advice about my career. I'm a successful businesswoman. Treat me like one. Third, I looked directly at Sarah. No more comparisons. We chose different paths. Both are valid. This isn't a competition. Sarah looked away. And finally, I said, my voice firm but not unkind, respect is non-negotiable, even from family, especially from family. Or, Uncle Tom challenged, or our relationship stays strictly professional. Landlord and tenant if you take the house. Otherwise, we can exchange Christmas cards and nothing more. You're threatening us? Mom's voice was small. I'm setting boundaries, something I should have done years ago. I picked up my bag. I love you all, but I won't tolerate disrespect anymore. Not for one more dinner. This is because we tried to help you? Dad's voice was defensive. This is because you tried to help someone who didn't exist, a failure you invented in your minds. The real me has been successful for years. You just never bothered to look. Marcus stepped forward. Ms. Mitchell. Shall I send the property management agreements to your office? Please, I nodded. Monday morning is fine. The professional interaction emphasized the point. I was a businesswoman, not a charity case. The shift was immediate and uncomfortable. Relatives who'd spent the evening pitying me suddenly wanted my attention. Aunt Janet approached cautiously. Bella, dear, about what I said earlier, about marriage and time ticking, I didn't mean. You meant exactly what you said, I replied calmly. You thought I was a failure who couldn't attract a partner. Now you know I choose to be single because I'm busy building an empire. She flushed deep red and retreated. Uncle Tom cleared his throat. So, these investments of yours. How does one get started in real estate? There are books, I said, YouTube videos, courses, the same resources that were available when you were calling me financially unstable 10 minutes ago. Cousin Lisa tentatively raised her hand like we were in school. Could you maybe mentor me? I'm interested in investing. Email me a business proposal, I said. I'll consider it. The formal response made her blink. They were all realizing that access to my expertise would no longer be free or automatic. One by one, they approached with questions, apologies, sudden interest in my life. The same people who'd whispered about poor Bella were now calculating my net worth and wondering how to benefit from it. Bella's so smart, I heard someone whisper. Always knew she had it in her. The revisionist history had already started. By next week, they'd all claim they always believed in me. Mom was still sitting at the table, staring at the rental agreement. 20% off is generous. It's business, I corrected. Family discount is standard in property management. She flinched at the cold professionalism, but what did she expect? They'd treated me like a business problem to solve. Now I was treating them like potential tenants. The party was effectively over. Sarah had disappeared to the bathroom and hadn't returned. Dad stood by the window staring at nothing. Mom kept picking up the rental agreement, reading it, then putting it down again. We just wanted to motivate you, Mom said finally, her voice small. We thought if we pushed hard enough. You'd fix me? I finished. Turn me into Sarah? We always knew you were smart, Dad said, still facing the window. We just worried. No, I interrupted. Don't rewrite history. You didn't worry, you judged. You didn't motivate, you humiliated. Own it. The truth hung heavy between us. Sarah finally emerged from the bathroom, eyes red and puffy. She'd been crying. The golden child who'd never faced failure was processing her first real defeat. I'm leaving, she announced, grabbing her purse. Sarah, wait. Mom reached for her. No, Sarah pulled away. I can't. I need to think. She looked at me, and for a moment, the sister I remembered from childhood flickered through, vulnerable, scared, human. Was any of it real? She asked. Your struggles? The times you borrowed money? I borrowed $50 3 years ago for parking, I reminded her. You turned it into a story about me being broke. I never corrected you. Why? Because you needed to feel superior, and I needed peace. She left without another word. The Mercedes engine roared to life, then faded into the distance. The family WhatsApp group would be interesting tomorrow. The dynamics had shifted permanently. The hierarchy they'd all accepted without question had crumbled in one dinner. This changes everything, Mom whispered. No, I said. It reveals everything. There's a difference. 3 months later, the new normal had settled in, uncomfortable but undeniable. Mom and Dad still lived in their old house. They'd never signed the rental agreement, too proud to become their daughter's tenants but unable to forget the offer. Every family conversation now carried an undercurrent of awkwardness. They couldn't patronize someone who'd offered them housing. Sarah and I exchanged texts, nothing more. Professional, polite, distant. She'd hired someone to fix her foundation, a $75,000 repair that confirmed everything Marcus had said. Her social media posts about her mansion had stopped completely. The extended family treated me differently now. No more pity, but no real warmth either. I'd disrupted their comfortable narrative. Aunt Janet called once asking for a small loan of $10,000. I referred her to a bank. The most interesting change was professional. Word had gotten out somehow. Families talk, and this story was too good not to share. 3 new clients had reached out, impressed by someone who'd built wealth quietly while everyone doubted her. My freelance income increased by 40%. Marcus and I had coffee occasionally. He'd become something between a colleague and a friend, one of the few people who'd seen my success before it was forced into the open. "Any regrets about revealing everything?" he asked during one meeting. "No," I said. "But I wonder sometimes if I should have done it sooner." "Timing is everything in real estate," he replied. "And in family revelations, apparently." The family dinners continued without me. I'd been invited but declined. Some bridges, once burned, were better left as ash. I had boundaries now, and I intended to keep them. Success, I'd learned, was sweeter when you didn't need anyone else to validate it. But sometimes, just sometimes, proving everyone wrong felt pretty good too. Looking back, I realized the reveal was never really about the money. It was about respect. For 5 years, I'd accepted disrespect disguised as concern, mockery dressed up as motivation. I'd told myself that keeping quiet protected my peace, but silence had become complicity in their narrative. The truth was, I'd been hiding, not just my success, but myself. I'd let them define me by their limitations, their fears, their narrow definition of achievement. Every family dinner where I stayed quiet while they dissected my failures was a betrayal of who I'd become. Success isn't just about accumulating wealth or properties. It's about owning your story, standing in your truth, refusing to shrink yourself to make others comfortable. I'd built a real estate portfolio worth millions, but the real achievement was finally demanding the respect I'd always deserved. My mentor David had been right. There's a difference between humility and being a doormat. True humility doesn't require you to accept humiliation. It doesn't demand silence in the face of disrespect. The properties, the LLC, the 6-figure contracts, they were just evidence. The real success was the moment I stood up at that table and said, "Enough." The moment I stopped needing their approval to feel valuable. Your worth isn't determined by others' perceptions. It never was. But sometimes, when those others are family, when their perceptions become attacks, when their assumptions become your cage, sometimes you have to show receipts, not to prove yourself to them, but to free yourself from their limitations. Success is sweeter when you don't need to announce it. But sweetest of all is the moment you realize you don't need their validation anymore. That freedom? That's worth more than any property portfolio. If you're sitting at your own family's table, shrinking yourself while they discuss your failures, here's what I learned. You don't need to prove yourself constantly. Your achievements are valid whether or not your family acknowledges them. Document them for yourself first. Keep records. Celebrate privately. Build quietly. Your success doesn't require an audience. But don't tolerate persistent disrespect. There's a point where silence stops protecting your peace and starts enabling their abuse. When family members are actively damaging your reputation, affecting your livelihood, or crushing your spirit, that's when revelation becomes necessary. Choose your moments wisely. I waited 3 years, maybe too long. But when I revealed everything, I had undeniable proof. Marcus Thompson's presence wasn't accidental. I'd invited him knowing his authority would make my truth impossible to dismiss. Let success be your quiet rebellion. While they're gossiping about your failures, build your empire. While they're offering charity, accumulate wealth. While they're pitying you, surpass them. There's power in moving in silence. But remember, the goal isn't revenge, it's respect. It's boundaries. It's the freedom to exist without constantly defending your choices. Some practical advice. Keep your finances private, but your boundaries public. Don't share numbers unless forced, but do share expectations for how you'll be treated. If they can't respect you without proof of success, they don't deserve access to you with it. Family isn't a free pass for disrespect. Blood relation doesn't entitle anyone to belittle your journey. And if you must reveal your success, do it with grace, but without apology. You don't owe anyone an explanation for thriving. You don't owe anyone access to what you've built. Your success is yours. Own it, quietly or loudly, but always completely. The Mitchell family dinners go on without me now, and that's okay. I hear through the grapevine that I'm still a topic of conversation, though the narrative has changed. The failure became the mystery success story. The cautionary tale became the plot twist nobody saw coming. Mom and Dad are slowly learning to see me as I am, not as they imagined me to be. We have lunch sometimes, neutral territory, no other relatives, just us trying to build something new from the rubble of old assumptions. It's progress, slow but real. Sarah and I might never be close again. The dynamic was too damaged, built on a foundation as shaky as her mansions. But there's peace in that distance, a recognition that some relationships work better with space. Marcus became an unexpected friend and eventually a business partner. We're developing 2 more properties together. Turns out, having a property manager who respects your vision is invaluable. The most beautiful part? My success no longer needs their validation. The rental check's clear whether they're proud of me or not. The clients hire me based on my portfolio, not my family's opinion. The properties appreciate regardless of family dinners I don't attend. That's the ultimate boundary. Building a life so solid that others' opinions become optional. Not in anger or spite, but in freedom. Respect shouldn't require proof, but sometimes proof demands respect. And sometimes, just sometimes, the quiet one at the table is the one holding all the cards. They just don't know it until you decide to play them. Remember, your success doesn't need their approval, but your peace of mind might require their respect. Don't be afraid to demand it. Have you ever had to reveal a hidden success to stop family disrespect? Share your story in the comments. I read every single one. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories about setting boundaries and finding your worth. What assumption about you would shock your family the most? Let me know below. Until next time, remember, your success doesn't need their approval.